Joining us now is Peter Gibson, Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Social Integration. Mr Gibson, thanks very much for being with us this morning. It has been a very dark time, but one of the few positives to come out of the pandemic was that community cohesion, that spirit of people coming together to help each other out. In terms of the numbers, how did you see a change?
Good morning, Sarah. Well, the report that we've published today highlights that we had more than 12 million people volunteering throughout the pandemic, and we saw participation from groups that we don't always see getting involved, with more than 4 million people volunteering for the very first time. So what our report is concentrating on is how do we bottle that fantastic effort and how do we embed it and make sure that we can take advantage of that continuing and taking advantage of what's actually happened.
Now, a lot of people who signed up to volunteer for the first time were on furlough and found themselves with more time. Now that people are getting back to work, now that life is returning to some degree of normality, how do you maintain that momentum and the kind of numbers we're talking about?
Well, that's a really important point, and one of the things that the report concentrates on, and following our investigation report and evidence gathering from businesses, was how do we make sure that we help businesses embed that volunteering as part of their ongoing progress, appraisal, progression for employees. And by making it part of the process, what incentives can we put in there to businesses to enable them to continue that? Because we know that once life starts to return to normal for people, the free time that they had, perhaps because of furlough, disappears, and also the sort of public upswell and demand that will have been there during the pandemic dissipates. So how do we bottle that and make sure that that continues? So the report talks about a whole host of things that civil society, local councils, voluntary organisations and businesses can do to help make sure that we continue with that benefit of that volunteering.
The idea of a volunteer passport has also been mooted. How would that work?
Well, it's essentially the idea that if you say you've had to have a CRB check, that can be passported between different organisations. If you have only got a small amount of time available to give, that you can sort of opt in to be effectively used as a bank, if you like, by voluntary organisations to call upon your time, because people are often not aware of the opportunities that are there on their doorstep. So by bringing the need and the supply together, you can help facilitate a greater amount of volunteering.
Now, we saw a greater number of young people volunteering during the pandemic. I know when I was at school that volunteering was certainly highly encouraged. You want to target younger people, children and those at school. How are you going to do that?
Well, one of the things that we've highlighted is that we believe that certainly school leavers should have a promotional pack upon leaving school in order to help them access volunteering opportunities. If we could also make a volunteering element part of the curriculum, just as young people go and have work experience, if we could make volunteering part of an experience period whilst they're at school, part of the curriculum, it will embed it. And we know that that activity that takes place in younger years will be followed through in later years.
Yeah, an incredibly rewarding experience at the same time. Peter Gibson, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this morning here on the Early Rundown.